At Christmas, my parents gave my sisters Hilde mountain of expensive gifts and handed my son nothing. My father shrugged, life's not fair. My son bit his lip and whispered, it's okay, Mom. But when my husband walked in and set a briefcase full of cash on the table, my parents' faces went white because they just realized the son they disrespected was their only hope. The moment I stepped into my parents' house that Christmas morning, I knew something was wrong. I had known, of course, before I even got into the car, before we bundled up against the cold and loaded Adam's little arms with the tray of cookies we had baked the night before. I had known before we even received the invitation. When I reminded myself, like I did every year, that this time, maybe things would be different. Maybe this time, my parents would remember that I had a son too. Maybe this time, he wouldn't be invisible. But there was nothing about it. As soon as I crossed the threshold, stepping into the warm, cinnamon-scented air of my childhood home, I saw the truth of it laid bare before me. Adam was standing in the middle of the living room, wrapped in a thick pink sweater, her blonde curls catching the twinkling lights from the Christmas tree. She was laughing as my father set another box in front of her, wrapping a pristine silver with a massive red bow. The pile of gifts around her was staggering. Big ones, small ones, stacked so high it nearly reached the lowest branches of the tree. My mother hovered nearby, her hands clasped, watching with that soft, indulgent smile she always reserved for Julia's child. Adam, standing beside me, shifted slightly on his feet. I felt the small pressure of his fingers twitching inside his mittens, the slight intake of breath. There was nothing for him. Not a single box. Not a stocking with his name. Not even a last-minute, half-hearted bag of candy. Nothing. I stared at the scene before me, at the way my father beamed as Ava tore into another box, at the way my mother barely glanced in our direction, as if our presence here was no more significant than the cold air slipping in from the open door. And I understood something then. Something that I had suspected for years but never allowed myself to fully acknowledge. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was a choice. Adam swallowed hard beside me. I could feel it, the slight tremor in his body, the way he forced himself to stand still. And then, in a voice that was so quiet I almost didn't hear it, he whispered, "It's okay, Mom." I closed my eyes. It wasn't okay. It had never been okay. And I wasn't going to pretend otherwise anymore. I should have seen this coming. Julia had always been their favorite. Even when we were kids, it was Julia who got the biggest slice of cake, Julia who got to pick the movie, Julia who got out of chores while I scrubbed dishes in the sink. It was Julia they rushed to comfort when she cried, Julia they defended, Julia they forgave, no matter what she did. She got pregnant at 19, dropped out of college, moved back home with Ava in tow, and it was as if all of her mistakes were washed away in an instant. She's a single mother, my mother would say, as if that explained everything. She has it hard enough already. I was married by then, working long hours in real estate, building a life with Marcus and Adam. I didn't ask for help, I didn't need it. And maybe that was the problem. You've always been independent, my father told me once when I finally asked why Julia always came first. Julia needs us more than you do. It was a simple answer. One he thought should satisfy me. But what he meant, what he refused to say, was that I had never needed them enough to be worth their effort. And because I didn't need them, neither did Adam. I stood there in that living room, my breath coming slow and measured, watching as my parents fussed over Ava like she was the only grandchild in the world. Julia smirked at me from the couch, as if she was daring me to say something. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the tray of cookies onto the ground and demand they explain how they could do this to an 8-year-old boy who had done nothing but love them. I wanted to tell them that every forced smile, every polite thank you Adam had given them over the years had been real, that he had meant it, because he hadn't yet understood that they had no love to give back. But I didn't say any of that. Because just then, the front door opened again, and Marcus stepped inside. He brushed the snow off his coat, his sharp gaze scanning the room. I saw the exact moment he understood what had happened. The moment he saw the untouched space beneath the tree where Adam's gifts should have been. And I saw something in him shift. Wordlessly, he set the black briefcase he had been carrying onto the dining table and flicked it open. My father, who had barely looked at us before, turned then. His gaze landed on the neatly stacked rows of $100 bills. Perfectly arranged inside the briefcase. The room went silent. "What's this?" my father asked, his voice rough. Marcus didn't answer right away. He just reached over, closed the briefcase again, and then met my father's gaze with a calm, unreadable expression. "A reminder," he said at last. "That the boy you ignored today is the only family member who could have ever helped you." My mother stiffened. "Help us? What are you talking about?" Marcus exhaled slowly. I looked into your finances. A beat of silence. My father's fingers twitched. Julia sat up straighter on the couch. You're in debt, Marcus continued, his voice even. A lot of debt. More than you can afford to pay off. Your retirement. The inheritance you thought you'd leave behind. Gone. Turns out, bankrolling Julia's life wasn't such a great financial plan. My father's face went white. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. I watched Julia's face go from confused to horrified in real time. But, my father started, his voice faltering, you thought wrong, Marcus interrupted. You assumed we were still scraping by, just like always. That we needed you. That we would come to you for help. He leaned back slightly, his fingers tapping against the top of the briefcase. But we don't need you, he said softly. Not now. Not ever. And then he stood, adjusting his coat, and turned to Adam. Come on, buddy, he said, his voice warm now, steady. Let's go home. Adam nodded, his small hand slipping into his father's without hesitation. I looked at my parents one last time, at the panic settling into their features, at the way their eyes darted between the briefcase and us, calculating, scrambling. And then I smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I had nothing left to say to them. We turned and walked out the door. And this time, I didn't look back. The cold air hit me as soon as we stepped outside, sharp and bracing against my flushed cheeks. Adam's fingers curled around mine, his small hand warm despite the winter chill. I felt Marcus beside me, steady and silent, his grip firm on the handle of the briefcase. The front door remained open behind us. I could almost feel my parents' eyes burning into my back, hearing the unspoken words caught in their throats. They had always assumed we would stay, that we would sit through the humiliation like we always did, that we would force a smile and pretend none of it mattered. Not this time. I took a deep breath, staring out at the frost-covered street. The snow had picked up while we were inside, fat flakes drifting down in slow spirals, coating the world in a deceptive kind of beauty. Nothing looked still, peaceful, like nothing terrible had just happened in that house behind us. Mom. Adam's voice was soft, uncertain. Are we really leaving? I turned to him. His blue eyes were wide, searching my face for reassurance. For something solid to hold on to. Yeah, baby, I said. We are. He hesitated, then nodded, his small shoulders relaxing just slightly. But there was something else there too, something I recognized because I had felt it myself so many times before. A lingering, desperate hope. Because no matter how many times they ignored him, no matter how often they made him feel less than, he was still just a child who wanted his grandparents to love him. And that thought broke something inside me all over again. I bent down, adjusting his hat so it covered his ears properly. You okay? Adam gave me a quick nod, but he was chewing his bottom lip again, a habit he had picked up when he was nervous. I smoothed my fingers over his cheek, brushing away a stray snowflake. Tell you what, Marcus said, breaking the quiet. How about we go get some hot chocolate? Adam perked up slightly. With whipped cream. Obviously. Marcus crouched down so they were at eye level. And extra marshmallows. Maybe even a slice of that cake you like from the bakery. Adam considered this. The chocolate one? Marcus grinned. Of course. That earned a small, hesitant smile from our son, but I could still see the wheels turning in his head, the questions he didn't know how to ask yet. I knew what he was thinking. He was wondering if we were really gone for good. If we were ever going to come back. If this was just another fight that would eventually blow over. Like the ones he had seen before. But this wasn't like before. This time, there was nothing to come back to. We made it halfway down the driveway when the sound of hurried footsteps crunched behind us. Wait. I didn't have to turn around to know it was Julia. This didn't stop walking, didn't even flinch, but I did. I slowed just enough to hear the frantic edge in her voice, the barely concealed panic. You're really leaving, she demanded. Just like that. I turned slowly. She was standing at the bottom of the porch steps, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her face twisted with something ugly and desperate. You thought we were going to stay? I asked. Julia scoffed. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. So they forgot a few gifts. You're really throwing a tantrum over that? Something sharp twisted in my chest. A tantrum, I echoed. Julia rolled her eyes. It's Christmas, for God's sake. You're really going to ruin the whole day because you're mad at Mom and Dad. Grow up. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. Did you see his face, Julia? I asked, my voice quiet, controlled. Did you see Adam standing there, waiting for something that was never going to come? She shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Adam, who was still holding tightly to Marcus's hand. He's a kid, she muttered. Kids get over things. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, Julia, I said, taking a step closer. Kids remember. Maybe not all of it. Maybe not every little detail. But they remember the way things made them feel. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't let her. I remember. My voice was shaking now, but I didn't care. I remember every birthday where you got a bigger gift. Every holiday where Mom and Dad fawned over you while I sat on the sidelines. Every time they made it clear that I was the one they could forget about. Julia's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Oh, now you care about fair. I let out a breathless, bitter laugh. That's rich, Julia. It really is. She swallowed, her eyes darting toward Marcus, who had been silent this whole time, watching. I could see the calculation happening in her mind. The way she was suddenly processing what he had said inside. Our parents were in trouble. Financial trouble. And we were the only ones who could have saved them. But we weren't going to. I saw the exact moment it hit her. The moment she realized just how badly she had screwed up. Look, she tried again, her voice softer now, like she was trying to backtrack. I get that you're upset, okay? But you don't have to. I didn't let her finish. Go back inside, Julia. She blinked. What? You heard me, I said. Go back inside. Go enjoy your mountain of gifts. Go pretend that nothing happened. That's what you do best, right? She hesitated, glancing toward the house, and for a second, I thought she might actually apologize. But she didn't. Instead, her mouth pressed into a thin, angry line, and she shook her head. Fine, she snapped. Run off and act like you're better than us. But don't expect them to come crawling back, because they won't. I met her eyes, steady. They won't have to, I said. They already lost us. And with that, I turned away, grabbing Adam's hand again, ignoring the way Julia was still standing there, fuming, watching us leave. Marcus let out a slow breath. You okay? He murmured as we reached the car. I didn't answer right away. I just exhaled, watching my breath curl into the cold air, watching the way Adam climbed into the back seat without another word. I was okay. Or maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was just tired. But either way, I knew one thing for certain. I was done. For good. We drove in silence. The roads were slick with ice, the streetlights casting long shadows over the snow-covered sidewalks. Inside the car, the heater hummed softly, filling the space with warmth, but I still felt cold. Not from the weather, but from everything else, the weight of years, the exhaustion of pretending, the slow, creeping realization that we had really done it. We had walked away. Marcus kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly on my knee, grounding me. He didn't say anything, didn't ask if I was okay, because he already knew. This wasn't the kind of hurt that a simple "are you alright?" could fix it. In the back seat, Adam was quiet, staring out the window, his breath fogging up the glass. He wasn't crying. He hadn't cried once. That somehow made it worse. I turned slightly in my seat, glancing back at him. Are you sure you still want that hot chocolate? Adam blinked, as if he'd forgotten we had talked about it. He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Marcus caught my eye in the rearview mirror and gave me a small nod before turning the car onto a familiar street. The little cafe at the corner of Main Street was still open despite the holiday, its windows glowing warmly against the dark night. I had taken Adam here dozens of times after school, and the owners knew us well enough to greet us by name. But tonight, the place was nearly empty, just a few stragglers sipping their drinks, the sound of quiet jazz floating through the air. We slid into a booth near the window. Adam climbed in beside me, pulling his mittens off one finger at a time. His movements were careful, precise, like he was trying very hard to focus on something small. When the waitress came over, Marcus ordered our drinks, hot chocolate for Adam, coffee for us. Normally, we would have let Adam pick a pastry, but neither of us asked this time. He didn't either. I reached out, running my fingers gently through his messy curls. He didn't pull away, but he didn't look up either. Marcus leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. You can talk about it, buddy. Adam's fingers twitched where they rested in his lap. There's nothing to talk about. I swallowed. Baby, it's okay, he said again, just like he had back in that living room. And I realized with a sharp, aching pain that he wasn't saying it because he felt okay. He was saying it because he thought he had to. Marcus exhaled slowly. He reached for the sugar packets, flipping one between his fingers, watching Adam carefully. Even though, he said, voice casual, when I was a kid, my dad forgot my birthday once. Adam blinked, finally looking up. Really? Marcus nodded. Yup. I was 7. I waited all day, thinking maybe he just hadn't said anything yet. Thought maybe there was a surprise coming or something. He shrugged. But nothing. It was just a normal day for him. I had heard this story before, but Adam hadn't. He was staring now, wide-eyed. What did you do? Marcus smiled slightly. I didn't cry. I didn't get mad. I just told myself it didn't matter. He leaned in. But it did matter. It mattered a lot. And I wish someone had told me that back then. Adam looked down at the table, tracing a finger along the rim of his napkin. I thought maybe they just forgot at first. His voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. But then I knew they didn't. I reached for his hand, squeezing gently. He let me. I don't get it, he whispered. Why don't they love me? The question shattered something inside me. I wanted to tell him they did. I wanted to lie to him, to tell him that his grandparents loved him in their own way, that they just didn't know how to show it. But I couldn't. Not anymore. They don't know how to love the right way, I said instead. And that's not your fault. Adam nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me. Not yet. The waitress returned with our drinks, setting them down carefully. Adam wrapped his small hands around his mug, staring into the whipped cream as it melted into the chocolate. I don't think I want to see them again, he said finally. Something inside me cracked. You don't have to, I promised. And for the first time since we walked out of that house. He smiled. Just a little. We got home late. Adam had fallen asleep in the car, his head tilted against the window, his little hands tucked beneath his coat. This carried him inside, his arms strong and steady, the way they had always been. I stood in the doorway, watching as he tucked Adam into bed, brushing the hair gently from his forehead. He's going to be okay, Marcus murmured. I nodded. Yeah. But I wasn't sure if I was. I walked back into the living room, collapsing onto the couch with a long, exhausted breath. The Christmas tree lights blinked softly in the corner, casting a warm glow over the presents still sitting beneath it, the ones we had picked out so carefully for Adam. The ones my parents hadn't even asked about. I felt Marcus sit down beside me, his presence a quiet comfort. They'll reach out eventually, he said after a long moment. I knew he was right. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, my parents would realize what they had lost. And when they did, when they finally swallowed their pride enough to pretend none of this had happened, I would have to decide what to do. And I didn't know if I had it in me to forgive them. Days passed, then weeks. Christmas faded into the new year, and life settled into something quieter, something lighter. I didn't realize how much weight I had been carrying until it was gone. Adam didn't mention my parents again. And I didn't bring them up. If he was waiting for an apology, he never said so. If he was hurting, he carried it in that quiet, careful way children do when they don't want to be a burden. But I saw it. I saw the way he hesitated when he talked about school, as if he expected someone to interrupt or dismiss him. I saw the way he watched other kids with their grandparents in the park, his fingers twitching at his sides. It would take time. And that was okay. Marcus and I focused on him, on us. We planned a trip to Florida for spring break, just the 3 of us. Adam had never seen the ocean before. We filled our home with warmth, with laughter, with the kind of love that didn't need to be earned. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't think about my parents at all. At least, not until the call came. It was a Sunday afternoon when my phone rang. I was in the kitchen, rolling out dough for cinnamon rolls, when the screen lit up with my mother's name. I stared at it for a long moment, flour dusting my fingers, my heart oddly steady. Marcus glanced up from where he was helping Adam with a puzzle at the table. His gaze met mine, calm and knowing. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I wiped my hands on a towel, then picked up the phone. Hello. There was a pause, the kind that stretched just a second too long. Then my mother's voice, thin and hesitant. Hi, sweetheart. She said it like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't walked out of her house weeks ago, like we hadn't left her standing there with the cold truth of her own choices. I leaned against the counter. What do you want? She exhaled sharply, as if I had wounded her. Is that any way to talk to your mother? A laugh bubbled up in my throat, low and humorless. You haven't been my mother in a long time. Silence. Then, carefully, she said, I think we should talk. I glanced at Adam, who was focused on his puzzle, his little brows furrowed in concentration. My heart clenched. I don't think we have anything to talk about, I said. There was a rustling sound on the other end, and then my father's voice cut in. Rough and irritated. All right, enough of this nonsense. We need to have a serious conversation. I waited. He cleared his throat. We're in a bit of a financial bind. I smiled to myself. There it was. We could use some help, he continued, his voice lowering as if he was trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. A loan, just to get things back on track. Nothing unreasonable. I let the silence stretch between us. Let them feel it. Finally, my mother sighed, her voice softer now. We've always been family. And family takes care of each other, right? I almost laughed again. Family takes care of each other. Like they had taken care of Adam. Like they had made sure he never felt small. Never felt unwanted, never felt like a shadow in someone else's life. Marcus was watching me, waiting. He already knew what I was going to say. I took a slow breath. Now my father scoffed. Excuse me? No, I repeated. I won't help you. A stunned silence. Then my mother, her voice is sharper now. You would really do this to us? I tilted my head, considering. You did this to yourselves. My father growled under his breath. You're being childish. No, I said again, and this time, I let myself enjoy it. I'm being fair. Isn't that what you always said, Dad? That life's not fair. Silence. I pushed away from the counter, my fingers drumming lightly against the phone. I learned a lot from you both. You know. I learned that love shouldn't be conditional. I learned that a real family doesn't pick and choose who matters. But I learned that some people only reach out when they need something. My mother's voice wavered. You made your choice, I interrupted. You chose Julia. You chose Ava. You chose to pretend my son didn't exist. And now, when you need something, suddenly we're family again. I let out a slow, deliberate breath. I don't think so. I could hear my father's breathing, heavy and angry. My mother, sniffling, as if she was trying to summon up tears that wouldn't come. We're going to lose everything, she whispered. I let my eyes drift back to Adam, to my beautiful, kind-hearted boy who had spent years waiting for love that would never come. And then I smiled. Life's not fair, I said simply. And I hung up. Marcus was smirking. That felt good, didn't it? I turned to him, shaking my head with a small laugh. You have no idea. Adam looked up from his puzzle. Who was that? No one is important, I said, ruffling his hair. Come on, let's finish those cinnamon rolls. And just like that, the moment passed. And we moved on. As the scent of warm cinnamon filled the air and Adam laughed, completely unburdened, I realized something, we weren't missing anything. We never had been. The only ones who had truly lost something were the people still waiting for a call that would never come.
Good morning， 早安，妈妈们。借我你那个麦试一下。你们收到了这个 Oxford Dictionary Pen 没有啊 ？e-Kamus 就是上次 Kobe Daddy 跟这个 e-Kamus 配合，然后开卖的这个 e-Kamus。这个 e-Kamus 我自己呢也有买一套给我的孩子，然后呢我也买一套送给。